Welcome, fellow travelers, to Freak Week 2019, your one-stop shop for all video game-related conspiracy theories, horror game compilations that'll make you shit your trousers, and terrifying news for your favorite video games. Stick around, if you dare. Hopefully you got a fresh diaper strapped on, because this is going to be some scary shit. The first conspiracy theory is about the Nintendo 64 Majora's Mask cartridge. There was a young gentleman who shall not be named, just like Voldemort, and he came across this blank N64 cartridge that simply had Majora's Mask written across it in Sharpie, which, as you know, was quite a come-up for him. I mean, one of the best Zelda games ever made, so he was super aroused by that. But it's not what it seemed. So this young dude gets home, he pops that cartridge in his N64, he's got his Mountain Dew, he's got his Cheetos, he's ready to play. But there's a save file already on there titled Bin. No big deal, could have been a previous owner, right? But this is where it gets weird. He starts a new game, leaving the bin file, and as soon as he plays, the NPCs refer to him as Bin. Kinda weird, but nothing too crazy, could be a glitch or something. So he went back and deleted the bin file, and then created a new save file. But the cartridge said fuck that. And like something straight out of the X-Files, the game started acting erratically. Music would play backwards for no reason, and his character was followed by a statue of the game's main character. Somehow the bin file mysteriously restored itself with a second, more pants-shittingly ominous save file titled Drowned. Now there's two save files that this young man did not create, and every time he played after that, he would die almost immediately, and a message would appear on the screen saying, "You've met a terrible fate, haven't you?" Crazy shit. So sticking with Nintendo, moving away from Zelda and towards our good old-fashioned Pokemon, which seems to be steeped by historical conspiracies. So Red and Blue was a massive success for Nintendo, but did you ever ask yourself where the hell the adults are in that game? There's an entire town of just 10-year-olds walking around, and they have questionable living conditions if you look around, and the larger question is, where are all the male adults? And since they've disappeared, it lends to the theory that Pokemon actually takes place at the end of a large-scale global war, which has forced several changes in the world of the Pokemon society. So one of the biggest clues to support that theory is that both Ash and his rival Gary have no male parent figure throughout the game. The trainers who send their winnings back home are all children or very young, cops and nurses are all female, and any men you encounter are criminally minded, such as Team Rocket. Another large clue is in Vermilion City. The gym leader, Lieutenant Surge, is clearly a damaged veteran suffering from PTSD, and adding more legitimacy to this theory is that right before you battle Surge, he states to you, "You won't live long in combat, and my electric Pokemon saved me during the war," both alluding to a past conflict and possibly a current war Ash may be forced to be drafted into. So moving over to Sony, Final Fantasy VII and 8 are two of the largest titles from the PlayStation 1 era. Squall is a very popular protagonist and the main character of Final Fantasy VIII, and there's a huge conspiracy around him that he is actually a ghost and or in a coma for the entire second half of the game. Let me explain. At the end of Disc 1, Squall gets impaled by a shard of ice while fighting the main boss, Edea. Squall arises at the beginning of Disc 2 with no wounds, and not another character brings up the fact that he was just gutted like a fish. Up until this point, the entire first disc is relatively realistic. That shit goes right out the window at the beginning of Disc 2 after Squall gets stabbed to death, and many believe that that theory holds true because he dies from his wounds at the end of Disc 1, and the entire remainder of the game is Squall's dreams as he is passing away. This would explain why the game has such an increased fantasy tone after Squall's main battle, and a life flashing before his eyes montage reveals an image of Squall minus a face, which reinforces the hypothesis that Squall did not survive and the rest of the game is either him in a coma or a loop of Squall's last moments of fantasy before death. Back over to Pokemon. In 1996, Red and Green was slotted in just about everybody's Game Boy around the world, and ironically enough, the Japanese were not part of that statistic. When the game did drop in Japan, it was supposedly linked to a massive spike in child suicides and illnesses. Children between the ages of 7 and 12 were either falling dreadfully sick or taking their own lives outright. The bizarre thing about this incident was that the children didn't fall ill or commit suicide until they reached Lavender Town in the Pokemon game. Many think the town's score or soundtrack was the cause of the ailments, and the town's specific music caused nausea and eventually suicidal tendencies in children. The music was eventually changed before it shipped out. This next conspiracy theory is called the Mark of the Beast. So this is back in 1981, arcade style. 19-year-old Jeff Daly died of a heart attack soon after posting a high score of 1,666 in the arcade game Berserk. 1 year later, 18-year-old Peter Burkowski also died of a heart attack moments after cracking the Berserk top 10 high score list twice in 15 minutes. Coincidence? Some point that the Mark of the Beast, or 666, being the score that matched on both consoles, were the demise of those two teenagers. Now we're moving over to Atari. As you see, nobody's safe from this conspiracy shit, boys. September in 1983, about 10 million unwanted Atari game cartridges showed up at the Alamogordo landfill in New Mexico. The reason behind this mass grave of video games? Because in 1982, Atari's earnings in the fourth quarter, well, they didn't exist. Atari had planned on two major blockbusters, Pac-Man and E.T. Neither of them sold as they should, so 5 million copies of each title were returned to Atari by disgruntled fans. And what else are you supposed to do with 10 million unwanted copies? Then dump them in Area 51. Well, boys, this is the end of part 1 for video game conspiracy theories. Hopefully your pants are bone dry. Mine are fairly moist. And on the next one, we're going to talk about Grand Theft Auto 5 and its association with the Black Dahlia, how Fallout 3 can predict the future, the Seventh Circle of Hell and World of Warcraft, as well as the mystery figures of Hill Valley, Saddam Hussein and guidance chips for a weapon of mass destruction, the Madden Curse, Hail Satan, ? And my favorite, government mind control and weaponized epilepsy through video games. Don't miss out, boys. Peace.